It's Wednesday, May 25th, and this is now on H&N. New at noon, H&N sources provide us insight on a possible cover-up at HPD involving the arrest of the new chief's adult son.
Hawaii reports nearly 9,000 new weekly COVID cases.
It was too slow.
Lawmakers are asking how the nation's baby formula shortage happened. I'm Michael George with how soon supplies could be restored.
Plus, new details about the suspect in the Texas mass school shooting. These stories and more coming up on This Is Now.
Good afternoon. Thank you for watching This Is Now. We're getting started today with some breaking news.
That's right. Less than 48 hours after Joe Logan was named Honolulu's next police chief, we've learned his adult son was arrested. And HPD's handling of the case is raising questions. Our chief investigative reporter, Lynn Kawano, has more.
All right, Lynn, let's get started with the details your police sources are telling you.
Yesterday afternoon, Zane Logan, he's a 36-year-old, so adult son of the newly appointed chief, Arthur Joe Logan, was arrested in the Ala Moana area for terroristic threatening and assault. Now, he is an adult, so we get it. Joe Logan may not have even known about the arrest. But what was concerning was initially the highlight, which is the report that describes what happened, was labeled "Do Not Post" or "Do Not Post to the media." So in an effort to practically hide it from us. And that's unusual because in a terroristic threatening and an assault case, there really is no point in hiding it from the media. Those are usually reserved for sex assaults or juvenile cases. So to have "Do Not Post to the media" on there, it seems possibly like someone was covering up, someone within the administration was trying to hide it. Again, it's possible Joe Logan doesn't even know about that, but more importantly, that the current administration seems to have wanted to keep that from the public at the time.
All right, Lynn, go ahead and explain to our viewers what this new "Do Not Post to the Media" report, or highlight as you call it, is. What is that?
A highlight tells you a description about what happened. It gives you the location, if there was an arrest, the age of the person arrested, and you can match it with the arrest logs and see the name of the person who was arrested, where they were arrested, all of those details. So it's pretty important. While it doesn't have a lot of details, in fact, HPD has been less transparent on these highlights about what actually goes on out there when these arrests or when these incidents happen. They do have a brief description, one, maybe two lines, about the arrest and about the incident and what the initial call was. Those are usually out there for us to see. Not every incident gets a highlight, but certainly some of the bigger ones do. And that's what's concerning, is the fact that this highlight would not have been public immediately when it happened. Shows a little bit that they had something to hide. And what's important here is Joe Logan's son, so Zane Logan, has been arrested 26 prior times. I don't think any of those highlights would have been labeled "Do Not Post" up until now. And some of those go back years. There were some recent arrests as well for felony theft. But again, it appears all of that is out in the open. When I look those up in the computer, nothing is hidden. So for this one to be hidden, the timing just seems a little bit suspicious. I'm told that since I sent an email to HPD this morning, before 9 a.m. this morning, that the highlight is now there and it is now open to the public. Not sure what prompted them to make that change, or we'd like an explanation from HPD is where we are right now.
And of course, the timing coming just days after Logan was appointed to be the new chief. All right, we'll have to see how this story develops throughout the afternoon. We'll look forward to further reports from you, Lynn, on later editions of H&N.
We have new details about the gunman's actions just before his deadly rampage at a Texas elementary school. Chris Wynn is in Uvalde with the latest.
And we're learning new details about the gunman. Law enforcement officials saying he was a high school dropout who lived with his grandmother. This afternoon, the governor of Texas placing the blame for the shooting solely on mental health. What should have been a joyous day just before summer break turned into a nightmare when 19 children and 2 teachers were shot and killed at Robb Elementary on Tuesday. Families, instead of planning vacations, are now planning funerals.
Evil swept across Uvalde yesterday.
These are the faces of just some of the victims. 4th grade teacher Eva Mireles, 10-year-old Amary Jo Garza, 10-year-old Jose Flores, and Javier Lopez smiling here after making honor roll that morning.
Teacher got hit.
The suspected gunman is an 18-year-old who police say shot his grandmother before going to the school and opening fire on a 4th grade class.
He was dropped out of school. He had no criminal history that we've been able to find.
As the community grapples with this horrific tragedy, the conversation in Washington turns to curbing gun violence.
Our country is sickened and outraged by the senseless evil that struck Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas.
One nation under guns. It doesn't have to be that way. Our parents don't need to drop their kids off at school and wonder if their kid will be next.
Many now wondering whether these words from politicians will be turned into action. This community trying to make sense of the tragedy. A memorial fund has been set up to help support the victims' families at the First State Bank of Uvalde. In Texas, I'm Chris Wynn. Back to you.
Here at home, the Kauai Police Department says as a precaution, it will be increasing police presence and patrols at schools around the island following the deadly shooting in Uvalde. The department says the action is to support school resource officers and the community with additional security until the end of the school year. Now, as we've seen after past tragedies, there are resounding calls for change and gun reform. For more on this, let's bring in Hawaii News Now's chief national political analyst, Greta Van Susteren. Now, Greta, we saw last night in his address President Biden calling on Congress to pass gun safety legislation. How has Congress been responding?
You know, I hear that and I just want to pull my hair out because that's what happens every time there's a mass shooting, is that somebody calls for the gun legislation. Both Republicans and Democrats run to the microphones and speak about how horrible it is. And it is horrible. But here we are again. You know, I covered Sandy Hook. I've been to these schools. So now how is Congress handling it? Well, there are 2 bills that passed the House in March of 2021. One was to expand background checks, and the other was to increase the time that the FBI had to do background checks from 3 days to 10 days. But that has never made it to the Senate, and the Senate has never voted on it. So now there's discussion in the Senate to vote on that. It's not likely to pass because there are a lot of Democrats that don't like it as well as Republicans. But here's the thing that's real, you know, it's something I've been very upset about for years, is that we're in the midst of a crisis. Many of the politicians are running to Twitter and to the microphone. And what happens when they've got this, when they should discuss what to do, whether to pass it, not to pass it, whether to do something or not something, they decide that they have a 2-week recess that starts tomorrow. So instead of locking themselves in the Senate and trying to do something, although whatever they do is never going to stop this completely, they take a 2-week recess. So go figure.
Yeah, and you know, can President Biden use his executive orders if Congress fails to act?
There's not much he can do. He issued an executive order having to do with ghost guns. Those untraceable guns in April, but ghost guns had nothing to do with the shooting in Buffalo 10 days ago, or what we understand to be the shooting at the school down in Texas. So there's not much he can do. But look, he's been around for a while. He was a U.S. senator for a while, and he's a vice president. So it's not like he doesn't have some responsibility in not getting everybody together to try to see if there's some things that make sense in light of the Second Amendment that respects the Second Amendment, but also respects the right of people to be safe and even to send their kids to school and be able to go to the grocery store without worrying about a massacre. So President Biden is very emotional. We're all emotional. You can see that I'm emotional about this. But still, it's like, the people with the authority to do it are the White House, the House, and the Senate. And they've been talking about this for years. And they don't seem to be making any steps forward. They just talk about it. By the way, I should tell you this. This topic, like abortion, raises money for both parties because it's so emotional and so passionate. And I hate that aspect to it. Is that it's because the people who are for the Second Amendment will send money. Those who are opposed to the Second Amendment will also send money. When the real problem is that people are not sitting down and discussing, especially our leaders, to try to figure out if there isn't something we can do to protect people.
Right, you mentioned Sandy Hook. I think a lot of people after that tragedy thought something might happen, some optimism there. How do you think they're going to handle this? Do you think anything's going to change after this?
I mean, look, I'm not suggesting that there is any sort of magic thing that they can do. Look, there are over 300 million guns in this country. And there is a Second Amendment. And all of the people who own 300 million guns, most of them don't do anything wrong with them. They just, those are lawful people. They bought them lawfully, they use them lawfully, and there's a Second Amendment that protects it. The problem is these other events, these basically massacres, aren't there isn't there something we can do to better protect people in this country? It's like, why did it take 30 minutes for that team apparently to get to the school in Texas? That seems like a long time. I think that's what it was, and that's just an early report. But, it's like, there are things that we can do better. But we can't do them better if the Republicans and the Democrats won't sit down and talk. If the White House won't sit down with the House and the Senate and talk, and it doesn't help that the Senate is going on a 2-week recess tomorrow.
Yeah, and Greta, talking about gun laws, the ATF, the agency that regulates guns and gun laws, they haven't had a director since 2015. Why is that, and are we close to getting one?
Well, I mean, that's more absurdity and sort of reflects on sort of the work ethic problem that I'm identifying with the House and the Senate and the White House not doing anything about these other issues. Is the ATF, as you know, it has not had a director since 2015 that has been confirmed by the Senate. Now, President Biden had nominated somebody else a couple months ago last year, and that person withdrew his name because it was clear he was not going to get confirmed. Even a lot of Democrats weren't in favor of him. But it just shows the chronic problem in this city. I mean, how is it that we have so many important government jobs, like head of the ATF, that don't have anybody in charge since 2015? I mean, it's like, if I were in Hawaii, I would think, like, what are you people doing in Washington or not doing? But it's just another indication of how, things just can get kicked down the road here.
We'll be watching this very closely. Thank you so much, Greta Van Susteren, Hawaii News Now's Chief National Political Analyst. We appreciate your time.
Hawaii's COVID surge continues with 8,924 new infections and 5 additional deaths in the past 7 days. That's being reported by the State Department of Health. That compares to 7,149 new infections and 12 additional deaths last week. Now keep in mind, the state's COVID figures don't include positive home tests, so the real numbers are likely far higher. Now, DOH officials say they're watching the trends and they're worried about where the cases are headed. Hawaii's pandemic modeling group predicts the current surge will peak in June.
Food costs are soaring, and that's sending more people to food pantries. The Hawaii Food Bank reports a 15% jump in people needing their services. And new at noon, Sammy Solina reports that those prices are also affecting the food pantries themselves, making it harder to provide services to people in need.
Lately, the most difficult part of serving folks in need isn't finding volunteers.
Okay, you're welcome.
It's finding the food.
Okay, there you go.
Wally Inglis leads St. Elizabeth's Episcopal Church's Wally House.
Hey, good morning.
His goal is to follow in the footsteps of Dorothy Day and Peter Morin, who started a house of hospitality back in the Great Depression.
So I walked into our food pantry yesterday, almost empty. Hi, Florence. How are you?
But their services in Kalihi have fallen on hard times.
Oh, the plates. The plates have gone from $21 to $29 in 2 months.
They've had to cut down on the hours their food bank is open.
There was nothing to hand out. Most of the stuff we get would go in the morning.
The Hawaii Food Bank says grocery prices have increased 12% over the past year. Foods like meat, poultry, fish, and eggs have gone up almost 30% since the start of the pandemic. The cost of rice went up 15% since the last time the food bank purchased it. Wally says because of this increase, he still sees a lot of folks asking for help.
Pink one for you.
Like Ludivina Domingo, who's 83.
I'm here to get the food bank because
My social security is not enough to spend for me every month.
She has worked in the hotel industry for almost 50 years, but her paycheck didn't allow her to save.
Yeah, that's not enough.
So she comes here daily.
Okay, here you go, Nani.
Nani Botello is homeless. She says it's hard to find a job without a high school diploma.
I only got food stamps, nothing else. No cash, no nothing. So I have to go around picking up, recycles, taking it in to get extra money, cash, and whatever.
She says she has hope that she'll have a roof over her head one of these days, but doesn't expect that to happen anytime soon.
It's hurting everybody, not only just me. It's hurting everybody. But it keeps raising higher and higher.
Volunteers at Wally House will continue moving the line along with what they have to offer, but a question lives in the back of their minds.
How much longer are people going to have to stand in line for a bag of food?
Sammy Solina, Hawaii News Now.
An Oahu family is really trying to make sense of a woman's mysterious death at a Kalihi bus stop about a month ago. Police arrested, then released a suspect, and it's really leaving the family and her loved ones confused. We're bringing in Dylan and Cheta with more on this story.
Yeah, Jonathan, we're not naming the suspect in this case because he hasn't been charged. Meanwhile, as the family remains in limbo over possible prosecution, the victim's daughter is left piecing together her mother's final moments.
My mom, in the most simple terms, she was very wholesome.
On the morning of April 21st, Cassie Lee Smits got the heartbreaking call about her mom, Jennifer. The 51-year-old had been found unresponsive at this Dillingham Boulevard bus stop near Kalihi Street.
I was very distraught. I mean, people like to say, oh, I had an out-of-body experience, but this wasn't a good one, but that's what it felt like.
Police initially classified the case as an unattended death, but later learned Smits had apparently been sexually assaulted. Her family says police told them it had been captured on surveillance cameras, with one especially haunting detail unknown.
They told me they couldn't confirm at the time that it took place whether my mom had passed away or if she was still alive.
Smith says her mom was in and out of homelessness, but recently found stable housing and sought treatment for mental illness. Her family desperately wants to know what caused her death. They say the autopsy came back inconclusive and a toxicology report is still pending.
Knowing in a time like this is probably when I would need her most, and that I can't just fall into her arms is the hardest thing.
The suspect was arrested in the university area on May 10th, nearly 3 weeks after Smith's death. But he was released pending investigation. Legal expert Megan Cow says this case presents significant challenges for the prosecution.
If you don't have a victim, or the victim is unavailable, or the victim has passed away, it's extremely difficult to prove that the victim did not give consent, because who else is going to testify to that?
Cow says prosecutors would likely have to rely heavily on witness testimony, and that's if they pursue charges. Meanwhile, Smith's daughter says her family deserves closure.
If we already know the DNA is his, and we already know surveillance shows that it's him, why is he out? I think it's a simple enough question.
Now, I reached out to both the medical examiner's office and the prosecutor's office. Both had no comment pending the ongoing investigation.
Now, Dylan, aside from the key witness in this case, the victim no longer being alive, what other legal challenges does this case really present?
Yeah, it's kind of a complicated one because I'm told prosecutors might not have known what to charge the suspect with. As you heard, first there's the challenge for the prosecution to prove there was no consent. And of course, without their victim, that will be hard to do for them to get a second-degree sexual assault charge. However, we still don't know exactly what killed her or when she died. And that makes a difference because that leads to possible other charges of abuse of a corpse, murder, or just assault. And so this is how Megan Cow explained the difference.
This is a misdemeanor. So it depends on when the suspect had the sex with the victim. If he had sex with the victim against her will, or the government can prove compulsion or mental incapacity, and then killed her, the defendant would be looking at either 10 years in prison or 20 years in prison for the sex assault, plus life in prison for the murder. On the other hand, if the suspect killed the person first and then abused the corpse, you're looking at life in prison for the murder and a misdemeanor, which is 1 year in jail for the abuse of the corpse.
And that was Megan Cow there speaking. Dylan and Cheta, thank you for your great reporting on this story, and we look forward to further updates as they come in.
Thank you.
The FDA is outlining missteps it took on contamination issues at a Michigan factory at the center of the baby formula shortage. The hearing comes as more formula arrives from overseas. Michael George has more.
The head of the FDA says changes need to be made across the board at the agency following its response to concerns of contamination at the Michigan factory at the center of the baby formula shortage.
You're right to be concerned, and the public should be concerned. As I've said already, it was too slow, and there were decisions that were suboptimal along the way.
Dr. Robert Califf told a House subcommittee part of the FDA's delay in inspecting the plant was because of a COVID outbreak at the Abbott facility. He also described the results of the FDA inspection.
Frankly, the inspection results were shocking. Standing water, cracks in the key equipment that present the potential for bacterial contamination to persist.
He also addressed the agency's delay in reviewing an October whistleblower complaint alleging safety violations at the plant. The whistleblower wasn't interviewed until December. Lawmakers expressed their outrage.
I'm actually pretty furious about the FDA's lack of food safety leadership, communication, and action.
I don't understand how the FDA can justify 3 months to respond to this crisis.
The hearing coincides with the arrival of a second shipment of baby formula from Europe to help ease the shortage. It follows Sunday's arrival in Indianapolis of a shipment from a Nestle plant in Switzerland. This latest shipment goes to Pennsylvania to be distributed. Michael George, CBS News, New York.
All right, a lot of news developing today. Something that's not too active or developing our weather. It's actually looking really pleasant, the kind of weather we like to see out there. Let's turn things over to Billy V with an update.
Take a look at today's weather. It's kind of the same for tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So really nice weather for the next 5 days. But here's where things kind of turn. Southeasterly winds 15 miles per hour on Monday and Tuesday. So this is going to be some muggy, humid conditions, the kind where you want to turn on the fans and the air conditioning. So just know that Monday, Tuesday may be good days to maybe go to the beach, the movies, or just stand around in the frozen food section of your favorite supermarket, perhaps. That might be one way to get through that. Monday, Tuesday also, bigger waves. They're saying that there's going to be a storm swell that's coming from Aotearoa, from New Zealand. So there's going to be big waves here. They say possible warning size.
Thank you, Billy V, for that update. Let's see what cyberspace is abuzz about today. And this sounds so good because I have not had my lunch and skipped breakfast. Ritz and Oreo have teamed up for a very interesting snack combination. It's sweet and salty fusion, my favorite. We're talking Oreo times Ritz here. The treat is 1 part cracker and another part cookie joined together by a layer of poisoned peanut butter.
Gross.
I say poison because Ashley's allergic to peanuts. Flavored cream and a layer of cookie cream. The two brands are owned by the same company, of course. So far, the company's only making about 1,000 packs. They're giving them away at Oreo.com/Ritz starting at noon Eastern tomorrow. That's 6 a.m. our time. And you do have to pay for the shipping there. And if you're ordering them to here, you better hope that they don't come as just crumbles.
You really think that sounds good?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That sounds delicious. I love peanut butter. I know you're allergic to it. I'm sorry for you. But I think that sounds amazing. I think minus the cookie cream, it would be a little better because it's getting a little bit too much there. But sounds good to me.
Some quick good news.
Yep.
It is National Wine Day, everybody. Some fun facts. Wine is made from fermented grapes or other fruits, and it's a myth that the color of grape determines the wine's color. It's actually the tannins or biomolecules in the fruit's skins that color the wine. So have a glass.
Oh, I will.
All day.
Yeah. Happy hour. Here we come. But no, sorry, Ashley, you have first at 4. Coming up at 4 on KHNO. Have a good one, everyone.
See ya.